Hi and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Let me take you somewhere strange. Somewhere so ordinary it feels invisible until everything inside it cracks. This isn't about how we met. This isn't about how it started. This is about how it ended, long before either of us admitted it. It started with a coffee mug. A dumb, chipped, blue ceramic mug with #OneHusband on it. I found it sitting on the kitchen counter one morning, bone dry, but still warm, just sitting there. And that was weird because I didn't make coffee that day. I hadn't touched that mug in months. I stared at it for a good 5 minutes. You ever have one of those moments where your stomach knows something before your brain does? Yeah. That. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't crazy. I was exhausted. Quietly exhausted. You see, by that point, I had already stopped asking her if she'd be home for dinner. I had stopped asking where she was going when she left in her new athleisure outfits, with makeup she never wore for me. I had stopped being part of her life. I was just the guy who paid the mortgage, kept the fridge full, and apparently made a damn good cup of coffee for someone else. Her name's Tessa, or I guess I should say was, I used to call her Tess. She used to call me B, short for Byron. Now, she calls me nothing. Unless it's to ask if I remembered to renew her car insurance. Spoiler, I didn't. That day, when I saw the mug, I didn't go into full-blown confrontation mode. That would have required energy I didn't have anymore. Instead, I sat down in the living room and did something worse. I started writing down everything she'd stopped doing. And it hit me like a gut punch. She hadn't kissed me in 119 days. Hadn't laughed at my jokes in 85. Hadn't touched my hand, not even by accident, in over 3 months. She stopped being a wife. Entirely. Like someone flipped a switch and forgot to tell me. And me? I was still showing up every day with my pathetic little loyalty. Still paying for her yoga classes. Still restocking the almond milk she liked. Still trying to believe I mattered. But that mug? That mug meant someone else had sat at our kitchen table while I was at work. Someone else had sipped from my shelf. Someone else had seen her smile when she used to smile for me. So that night I made a decision. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just removed myself from the equation. No more rent payments. No more grocery runs. No more car insurance. I wasn't her husband anymore, but I was still her provider. So I stopped. I left her a note that simply said, "You've been acting single. I'm done funding the performance." I didn't get a text. Not right away. But 2 weeks later at 2:17 a.m., she finally reached out. 3 words. All lowercase. "Can we talk?" She didn't knock. She used to always knock, even when she had her key. But that night, 11 days after I walked out, she just opened the door like she still lived there, like her name was still on the lease, like nothing had changed. I was sitting on the floor of my new place, a 1-bedroom above a liquor store, eating instant noodles straight from the pot with a plastic fork. There were 2 folding chairs, a stained mattress on the ground, and a cardboard box I was using as a coffee table. That was it. That was my life now. Stripped down, raw, and quiet. The door creaked open. I didn't even look up at first. I just said, "You found me." And she replied, "You didn't exactly go off-grid, Byron." Her voice was calm, like we were picking up groceries or watching a sitcom rerun. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was supposed to enter or deliver bad news. She looked different. Not in some dramatic way, just smaller, less certain. Like someone had deflated her ego just enough for humility to peek through. She saw the mug on the box. That mug. I had taken it with me, more out of spite than sentiment. She pointed at it and said, "I wondered where that went." I didn't answer. I just kept eating. She sat down on the other folding chair. Didn't ask permission. Didn't apologize. Just stared at me for a long time, like she was watching someone she used to know but couldn't quite place. Then she said, "You really stopped everything. No rent. No groceries. My gym membership's frozen. My Spotify's canceled." I looked up slowly and asked, "Did you come here to guilt me into resubscribing to your playlists?" She laughed. Actually laughed. But there was no joy in it. Just this hollow, embarrassed sound. "No." she said. I came because I don't know what I expected. I thought you'd beg, or at least argue. You've always been so soft. Soft. I wish I could tell you. I stood up and gave her some bold monologue about self-worth and rediscovery. I didn't. I just nodded and said, yeah, I used to be. There was a long pause. She looked around the apartment like she was searching for evidence that I had moved on. A new toothbrush, a second coffee cup, a woman's scarf thrown lazily over a chair. There was none of that, just the echo of choices she never imagined I'd make. She crossed her legs and said, so what now? We just throw it all away? And that's when it hit me. Not the betrayal, not the loneliness, not even the humiliation of knowing she had brought someone into our home while I was out working to keep the lights on. No, what hit me was how casually she said we, like we hadn't already died months ago. I took a breath and finally asked the question that had been clawing at my ribs since I left. Who was he? She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just said, it didn't mean anything. It was just attention. I needed to feel wanted again. Wanted. You ever sit across from someone and realize they don't even see you anymore? That's what that moment was. Because I had wanted her every day for years. Even when she stopped showing up. Even when she disappeared into her headphones and her little creative retreats. Even when she started dressing up for everyone but me. She kept talking, but I didn't hear most of it. I just heard static. Like someone had unplugged the cord between us and nothing she said could reach me anymore. And then, just when I thought she'd walk out, she dropped a bomb I didn't see coming. She said, Byron, I think I might be pregnant. The words didn't register at first. They just floated there in the room like a smoke alarm no one bothered to turn off. I blinked. Once, twice, and then I asked the only question I could form. Is it mine? She didn't answer. She just started crying. And that's when I knew. 2 days after she dropped the pregnancy bomb, I found an envelope on the doormat of my apartment. No stamp, no address, just my name, Byron, written in the kind of handwriting that trembles even when the hand doesn't. Inside wasn't a letter, no apology, no plea, just one thing, a folded printout of a lab slip, a blood test confirmation, positive, and the date lined up exactly with the week she'd claimed to be at her sister's writing retreat. The kicker? She didn't even sign it. No message, no context, just dropped it like a grenade and walked away. I stood there holding that paper, trying to calculate the odds, trying to remember the last time we'd even, and I came up empty. Empty like our bedroom, empty like her side of the couch, empty like the promises she stopped renewing long before she took off her ring. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I just sat down, stared at the mug again, God, that stupid mug, and tried to process the fact that I had become the ghost of a husband. A backup plan. The maybe daddy. The safe one she circled back to when the fun dried up. And yet, deep down, there was this tiny flicker of hope. A dangerous flicker. The kind that lives in men like me. Men who stay too long, love too hard, and forgive too easily. I hated that flicker, but it was there. Then came the knock. This time she didn't just let herself in. She stood at the door like someone rehearsing a confession. I opened it. She looked tired. Not makeup tired, but soul tired. She held a small brown bag and said, I brought tea, chamomile. You used to like that. We sat. She poured it into mismatched mugs. She used mine. And then she said something I never expected to hear. I ended it with him, the other guy. I told him I needed space, that I had messed everything up. I said nothing. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if it was anger or caffeine withdrawal or just the exhaustion of months pretending I wasn't crumbling inside. She continued, I don't know what this is, what we are, but I wanted to be honest. The baby, if it is yours, I want to do things right. If it's not, I still needed to tell you. And then she did the worst thing she could have done. She reached across the table, not for my hand, for my phone. She typed in a passcode and said, You should see this. It was a string of messages between her and him, the other guy. His name was Miles. Of course it was. That type of name that sounds like it belongs to someone with an expensive bicycle and a casual cocaine habit. The messages weren't flirty. They weren't even angry. They were desperate. I'm not raising someone else's kid, Tess. You said this was casual. You told me he didn't matter. That last one stuck in my chest like a blade. I didn't matter. I wasn't the villain in this story. But I wasn't the hero either. I was the afterthought. The ghost. The placeholder she forgot she'd filled. And now, here I was, sipping tea out of my own mug, listening to her justify the destruction she'd lit with both hands. I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights were blurry, like someone had smeared the skyline with regret. Then I asked calmly, "Why are you really here, Tess? Because it sounds a lot like your plan A bailed, and now you're hoping plan B forgot how to feel." She looked gutted, but she didn't deny it. She whispered, "Because you were the only one who ever made me feel safe. And maybe I didn't realize what that meant until I lost it." I stared at her for a long time. Then I reached into the drawer and slid something across the table. It was my old house key, bent slightly, faded. She looked down at it, confused, then back at me. I said, "That door doesn't exist anymore." And I walked out. But the story doesn't end there. 3 days after I left her sitting at that table, still staring at the old key like it could unlock a past that didn't exist anymore, I got a letter in the mail. A real letter, handwritten, folded carefully inside a plain white envelope with no return address. The handwriting was hers, sharp, rushed, slightly dramatic, like everything else she ever touched. There were only 6 lines. "Byron, I respect your silence, but there's something you need to see. Unit 141, Dempsey Storage, South Canal Road. Code 1037. If you want answers, that's where they are." No explanation, no manipulation, just that. For hours I debated tearing it up. I wanted to believe I was done with her riddles. Done with being the guy she ran back to when life slapped her too hard. But my curiosity was louder than my dignity. And, let's be honest, dignity hadn't been my strong suit lately. That night I drove to Dempsey Storage. It was one of those grimy 24-hour places with flickering lights and an office that smelled like stale coffee and sadness. I punched in the code. The gate creaked open like a scene from a bad indie film. Unit 141 was in the very back, behind a stack of abandoned bicycles and a rusted vending machine. I slid the latch, lifted the metal door, and stopped breathing. Inside were boxes, a dozen maybe, labeled in her handwriting. But one word was stamped across the top of every single one: him. At first I thought it was about Miles, maybe some unhinged archive of her affair. But then I opened the first box, and my heart folded in on itself. Photos of me, not just selfies or couple pics. I'm talking moments, intimate, unnoticed moments. Me brushing my teeth, me reading on the couch, me fixing the cabinet hinge, me laughing at the dog that used to follow us on our morning walks. All taken without me knowing. Each one had a date, and a small note on the back. "He still hums when he thinks no one's listening. He held my hand all through Mom's funeral. I don't deserve this man." It was like walking through a museum of someone who'd already died, and somehow that someone was me. I sat on the concrete floor for what felt like hours, flipping through years of a relationship I didn't know she was documenting. Through every box, I watched myself become smaller, sadder, more ghost than man. But even through all of that, her words suggested she saw me, really saw me, the whole time, which made her betrayal even worse. Because how do you throw away something you knew was good? I found one last envelope at the bottom of the final box. Inside was a printed photo, not of me, of them, Tessa and Miles. But this one was different. They weren't kissing or laughing or tangled in stolen intimacy. They were arguing. In a parking lot. Her face was red, mascara streaked. His body language screamed retreat. In the corner of the photo, dated 3 weeks ago, was a small printed timestamp and a security camera watermark. She had it printed, on purpose, like she wanted me to see the downfall. Behind the photo was a note. He left when I said I might be pregnant. You stayed when I gave you nothing. I destroyed the right thing and chased the wrong one. This is what I get. I didn't know what to feel. Was it regret? Manipulation? Some final plea for pity? I stood up, closed the boxes, and locked the unit again. I didn't take anything with me. That night, as I lay in my tiny apartment with the mug still sitting on the floor and the walls still bare, I had a dream. In the dream, I was standing in our old house, and she was across the room, holding out her hand. But every step I took forward, the house got dimmer, colder, and the walls began crumbling. And when I finally reached her, her hand was made of glass. I touched it, and it shattered. I woke up sweating, heart pounding. And for the first time since this all started, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The next day, I went back to work. I know that sounds small after everything, but it wasn't. It was the first normal thing I had done in weeks. I ironed a shirt. I packed a sandwich. I drove to my cubicle, greeted Brenda from HR with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, and sat down at my desk like I hadn't been unraveling inside. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to that storage unit. Those photos, the commentary on the back, especially the one that said, "I don't deserve this man," because it was true. She didn't. Around 2:15 p.m. my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Same number. I sighed and answered, expecting some insurance rep or spam call. Instead, I heard her voice. But it wasn't directed at me. She was talking to someone else. I know. He found the storage unit. Yes, all of it. No, I didn't plan for him to go there that soon. I thought I'd have more time to prepare what I was going to say. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I didn't exist anymore. It was on speaker. Pocket dial. A mistake. I froze. I missed the safety, she continued. He was home, you know? Miles was a thrill, a fantasy. But Byron, he was the air I breathed. And I didn't realize I was suffocating without him until it was too late. The voice on the other end was muffled. Probably her sister. Then Tessa again. No, I'm not trying to trap him with the baby. I haven't even taken the second test yet. Panicked. I wanted a reason to hold on to him. My stomach dropped. It was a lie. The pregnancy, the test, the envelope, all of it. Fabricated. I didn't hear the rest. I ended the call and sat there with the phone still pressed to my cheek, eyes staring at a spreadsheet I couldn't process. My ears rang. My chest felt like it had caved in. She faked a pregnancy to get me back. I'd been many things in this marriage. Invisible, unappreciated, overlooked. But this was new. This was manipulation on a level I couldn't explain to anyone without sounding like a fool. And the worst part? I wanted to believe her. Even now, even after that, some dumb fragment of my heart still hoped it had all been real. I left work early. I told Brenda I had a headache. She gave me a mint and a look of concern that almost made me cry. Back at my apartment, I stood in the doorway for a full 5 minutes before walking in. Everything looked the same. Empty pizza boxes, that cursed blue mug, silence pressing in from every direction. But I wasn't the same. Something inside me had shifted, hardened. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just paced, thought, questioned everything. And then, late into the night, I did something I hadn't done since the day she left. I opened my laptop, logged into our old shared cloud storage, one she had probably forgotten I still had access to, and started digging. What I found made my skin crawl. Photos, screenshots, drafts of text messages never sent. Voice memos labeled what I should say. One of them was a script, an actual script, of what she'd rehearsed to tell me about the pregnancy. Pauses included. Alternate reactions mapped out like she was prepping for an audition. But the file that shattered me was a video. It wasn't explicit. It wasn't even long. Just 30 seconds. But it was everything. She was sitting with Miles at a cafe, laughing. And then she leaned in and said, "I give it 2 weeks before Byron forgives me. He always folds. He's too nice for his own good. That's his weakness." She smirked. sipped her drink. Miles replied, "And if he doesn't?" She shrugged. "Then I'll just tell him I'm pregnant. Watch him come running." I closed the laptop, gently, like it would explode if I moved too fast. That was the moment I stopped loving her. No yelling, no smashing things, just stillness. A quiet, heavy grief that replaced hope like a fog swallowing light. But I wasn't going to disappear. Not this time. I opened my drawer, pulled out the one thing she hadn't taken from me, my dignity, and started writing a letter. Not to her, to someone else. Someone who needed to see exactly what kind of person Tessa really was. I addressed the envelope with shaking hands. No name, just a department and a building, Human Resources, Belgrove Design Firm. Inside was a printed letter, signed by me. Attached to it were three things: a transcript of the voicemail she pocket-dialed to me, a screenshot of the fake pregnancy plan, and the clip from the cafe where she boasted about manipulating me. None of it was illegal. None of it invasive. Everything was either recorded by her or publicly posted to cloud drives she forgot I had access to. I wasn't trying to ruin her. I wasn't even seeking revenge. Not in the typical sense. I just wanted the people around her to see her without the filters and smiles. I wanted to send a ripple through the world she built on charm and half-truths. I wanted one corner of her life to feel the weight of what she did. I dropped the letter in a postbox at 3:37 a.m. I didn't sleep after that. I didn't need to. For once, my mind was sharp, too sharp. Like someone had filed away the fog and left me with the truth in cruel high definition. By 10:15 the next morning, she called. I didn't answer. At 10:26, she texted, "Byron, did you send something to my work?" At 11:01, another text. "You need to answer me. They brought me in. Byron, please tell me this isn't what I think it is." Then a voicemail. Her voice wasn't angry. It was scared, trembling, rambling. "Byron, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't helping anyone. I didn't mean for things to go this far. I was trying to fix us. Okay? In my own way. Panicked. You always made me feel like I had to be perfect and I couldn't live up to that. And yes, I made mistakes, but exposing me like this is cruel. I could lose everything. Please, just call me." I didn't. At 1:42 p.m. I got a call from an unknown number again. This time I answered. It was her manager. He introduced himself in a strained, awkward tone and asked if I was the Byron referenced in the employee submission. I said I was. He sighed like someone who'd just learned the moon was hollow and filled with termites. He thanked me, not because he enjoyed the drama, quite the opposite. He thanked me because he said this wasn't the first time Tessa had blurred personal and professional boundaries, that HR had received complaints, that a pattern was emerging. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't want to dance on her reputation, but a part of me, a very quiet, very hurt part, felt seen for the first time. Later that evening, she showed up at my apartment. I didn't expect her to. I certainly didn't invite her. But there she was on my doorstep, makeup streaked, wearing one of my old sweatshirts like it was armor. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just looked at me and said, "You've never looked at me like that before." I didn't respond. Couldn't. She stepped inside uninvited, scanned the room, then sat on the edge of the mattress. "I'm suspended," she whispered. "They're doing a full review. Miles won't even answer my calls. My friends?" She laughed bitterly. "They're distancing themselves. I guess no one wants to be around a walking scandal." I sat across from her, arms crossed, tired to the bone. "What did you expect, Tess? You lied. Over and over. You treated love like leverage. And the worst part is, I still tried to believe you." Her lips trembled. For once, no words came. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You were always too good. That's why I had to break it." She looked surprised by her own confession. Like the truth had slipped out through a crack she didn't know was open. I stood, walked to the window again. Same view. Same city. But this time I felt like I wasn't in the apartment. I was owning it. She followed me with her eyes. "What now?" she asked quietly. I turned to her. "Now? Now you go home. You figure out who you are when no one's holding you up. And I figure out who I am without being stepped on. She reached out for me, but I stepped back. No more performances, Tess. The curtains closed. She left without another word. I don't know if she cried in the elevator. I don't know where she went after. But I know she didn't knock again. I hadn't spoken to anyone in my building since I moved in. That's just how things go in places like this. Boxes stacked in the hallway. People nodding in elevators but never asking your name. Suited me, honestly. I didn't want conversation. I didn't want connection. I just wanted silence. Stillness. To sit in the aftermath of everything and try to find whatever was left of myself inside the wreckage. But then someone knocked. 2 days after Tessa left for good. A gentle knock, not urgent. Not hers. I opened the door expecting a package. Instead, it was the woman from 4B. The one I always saw walking her golden retriever and humming what sounded like Fleetwood Mac. She had a plate in her hands. Banana bread. Homemade. Still warm. Wrapped in foil like a peace offering to a man at war with himself. She smiled, soft but not pitying. "You've been looking quiet," she said. "Thought you might need something warm." I didn't even know her name. I stammered something stupid, probably, "Oh, wow, thank you." She introduced herself as Maeve. Said she was a substitute teacher between gigs at the moment. She glanced behind me into the apartment, took one look at the mattress on the floor, the wall still empty, the same damn mug on the table, and asked, "Want some company?" I promise I don't sell anything. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat on the floor, ate banana bread. She didn't ask why I was living like a recently fired monk. She didn't ask about the mug, or the bags under my eyes, or the silence that kept swallowing the room every few minutes. She just talked about her dog, her students, and this one time a kindergartner asked if Pluto was still a planet and then cried when she said no. It was normal, stunningly normal, and that, somehow, made it feel like oxygen. She stayed for maybe an hour. When she left, she handed me a small sticky note with her number and said, "In case you need more bread, or someone to listen." I stared at that note for a long time. It wasn't a lifeline. It wasn't romantic. It was just kindness, uncomplicated, untied to guilt or history or manipulation. I hadn't realized how starved I was for something like that. Later that night, I got another text from Tessa. This time, longer. "I just want to say thank you for being better to me than I ever was to you. I'm going to therapy. I'm staying with my sister. I know I don't deserve a second chance, and I'm not asking for one. But if there's any part of you that still cares, know that I'm trying. I really am." I stared at it. Not angry, not hopeful, just tired. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened the Notes app on my phone and wrote a response. But I didn't send it. I didn't need to. Trying should have started before you broke me. I'm healing now. Without you. I deleted it. The next morning, Maeve knocked again. This time with blueberry muffins. We didn't talk about heartbreak. We didn't talk about exes. We talked about 90s cartoons and what kind of cereal is superior in every way. It's Cinnamon Toast Crunch, by the way, don't argue. As she was leaving, she looked back and said, "Whatever you've been through, it didn't kill your light. It just dimmed it a little. But it's still there. I can see it." That night, I looked in the mirror and believed her. Just a little. But things weren't over yet. Because 3 days later, I received something I didn't expect. Not a message. Not a knock. A legal document. In a sealed envelope. From a law firm I didn't recognize. The envelope was thick. Cream-colored, high-end stationery kind. The kind that makes your stomach twist before you even open it. I held it in my hands for 20 minutes before I even touched the seal. It was from a law office based downtown. I didn't recognize the firm's name, and for a brief moment, my anxiety spiraled into every possible scenario: lawsuit, inheritance, debt, restraining order. But it was none of those. Inside was a letter from Tessa's attorney. Along with it, a signed, notarized document relinquishing all financial ties to me. She was legally releasing her claims to our former joint accounts, the condo, and every asset we once shared. No demands. No hooks. Just an attached note in her handwriting again. You gave me everything. I took advantage of it. This is my way of giving something back. I hope someday you'll find joy without having to carry anyone else's weight. T. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. No shouting. No begging. No dramatic collapse. Just a quiet, unforced ending. The kind you don't usually get in real life. I read it 3 times, then set it down beside the mug on my table. That mug didn't hurt to look at anymore. The next evening, Maeve knocked again. She didn't bring muffins this time, just herself. We sat outside on the back steps and watched the sky turn gold. Her dog nuzzled against my leg, and she said, "You look lighter." I smiled. I feel it. We didn't talk about Tessa. We didn't need to. Some stories don't require retelling. Some just fade into the past like background noise that finally turns off. In the following weeks, I donated the photos from the storage unit to a thrift shop. I know that sounds insane, but I didn't want to destroy them. I didn't want to keep them. I just wanted to let them go. I got a couch. A real one. I hung a picture on the wall. I stopped eating over the sink. And one morning, as I poured myself coffee into a plain, handleless mug I picked up at a flea market, I realized something strange. I didn't miss her anymore. Not the real her. Not even the version I had made up in my head to survive. I missed who I was when I loved someone fully. But now, I was learning to love being someone worth loving. And I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me. Thank you for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. If you've made it this far, I've got a question for you. What was the moment you realized someone no longer deserved your energy? Or maybe the moment you got it back? Share it in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find their light again. And hey, sometimes peace doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just banana bread, blue skies, and learning how to breathe again. Until next time.